Good evening, boys and girls. I'm so happy to be reading your bedtime story to you tonight. And I even dressed up for you. I'm wearing my Dairy Queen crown. So let's get started. Our story tonight is called Adopted by an Owl, and it is the true story of Jackson the Owl. It is written by Robin Smith Van Frankenhuizen and illustrated by her husband Nick Van Frankenhuizen. I'm reading this tonight to you with the permission of the publishers, which is Sleeping Bear Press. So, now I've got that out of the way. Thump, thump, thump. Nick's eyes popped open. Just moments ago, he was pleasantly drifting off to sleep. But a sound, like someone walking across his rooftop, woke him. And now he lies silent and alert, listening and waiting. Then came a familiar hoo, 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 hoo. Could it be that his friend had come back? It all began years ago when a young boy stole a great horned owl chick from its nest. Bundled against the cold March wind, the boy retraced his steps into the woods. For over a week, he had secretly watched the great horned owl parents feed their young. But as he stared up at the giant tree, he began to have doubts about robbing the nest. The nest was higher than he remembered. Taking a deep breath, he took one last look to make sure the parents were nowhere near. Then tucked a burlap bag into his belt and began shimmying up the tree. Woodland creatures watched in silence as the intruder grabbed the frightened owlet from the safety of its nest and stuffed it into the bag. Its frightened screech pierced the air, warning the nearby parents of danger. The boy clung tighter to the tree as the returning parents swooped towards his head. Twice he nearly dropped the captured owl. As the protective parents continued their daring attacks, the boy began his long climb down the tree. The moment his feet hit the solid ground, the boy raced for home, dodging the endless attacks of the furious parents. In the secrecy of his bedroom, the boy emptied the bag onto his bed. The frightened owlet clacked and hissed at the stranger. Without a single care for the well-being of the young owl, the boy selfishly smiled and thought to himself, "Now this is a pet no one else has." As the owl grew, so did its appetite, and the boy quickly discovered that wild animals were never intended to be pets. It wasn't long before he realized he didn't even want the owl anymore. Soon after, Nick, with his special license to care for owls, came to take the young bird to a new home. The car ride was a novel experience. Balanced on the headrest of the passenger seat, the curious owl stared out the window. Here's our picture for that. There he is. As the car pulled into the driveway, the kitchen door flew open and out ran two young girls. "Where is he? Where is he?" they both squealed. They huddled around the new arrival, eagerly discussing a proper name for the bird. Faster than you could say bouncing, bobbing ponytails 4 times, the dimpled girl smiled and announced, "His name is Jackson." As if on cue, Jackson hooted his approval. Jackson was too young and inexperienced to live on his own. Until he was ready to be set free, a large cage would be his home. Nick was amazed at how easily the young owl accepted his new family. They spent many months together, becoming friends, but the time finally came when Jackson was ready to go. After saying his goodbyes, Nick opened the door, and the owl flew confidently into the night. Jackson was on his own. Here's kind of a gray picture, but there he is. He's taking off on a full moon. Days later, as Nick walked the winding paths of his farm, he spotted Jackson following him like a silent shadow from above. It seemed Jackson had decided to stay on. Look at this pretty picture. There's Jackson. You see Nick down below walking with the dog? And then there's Jackson and the two lambs. From then on, Jackson became a permanent part of the family. He accompanied Nick on every walk, greeted him when he returned home from trips, and if he was hungry, he reminded Nick it was time to eat. They became best buddies. During the cold winter nights, the owl began offering Nick mice that he proudly caught himself. At first, Jackson hooted and waited patiently on the balcony, railing for his friend to come out. Nick accepted the gift with thanks, offering it back to the owl the next morning for breakfast. Here's Jackson sitting on the railing. He's getting big. Oh, did you see the mouse in his mouth? Yeah. But as time passed, Jackson's trust for the family grew stronger. One evening, there came a tap, tap, tap on the glass door. Confused and sleepy-eyed, Nick opened the door. There, standing at the entrance, was Jackson, holding a mouse in his beak. And in he walked into the room and dropped the mouse into Nick's open hand. His long talons made a sharp click, click, click sound as he waddled across the wooden floor and back out the door. There he is. Look at, he's got another mouse and he's coming into the house. Jackson didn't always bring mice, and the family wasn't always pleased with his gifts. Look at this picture. Jackson brought a skunk. He was curious about the chickens and pigeons living on the farm and often flew into their coops. The birds did not enjoy Jackson's visits. Look at, he's causing quite a stir. The owl did not like the dogs and cats who shared the farm with him, and he took every opportunity to chase them away. None of the dogs or cats were too big for Jackson, but he never hurt them. There he is. He's like, shoo, get out of here. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the pine needles, Jackson woke his friend with a hoot, 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 hoot from his special tree next to the house, and Nick hooted back. They often talked to each other this way. There he is, sitting in a pine tree. Sometimes he enjoyed getting wet in the rain. It was like a refreshing shower, cleaning his feathers. But other times, he preferred to stay dry. Look at this one. Here he is, getting all soaking wet. But there he's up under the eaves, so he can stay dry. In the winter, icy winds blew layers of snow upon his body, but he didn't mind. He would snuggle deeper into his feathers, like a sleeper under a down quilt. Maybe like you guys do when it's cold out. Snuggle under your down quilts. I know I do. Mother Nature gave him earth colors in patterns of brown and grays for camouflage. He tucked his body tightly against the tree trunk and used his dark-colored feathers to stay hidden. Ooh, let's see if we can find him. Do we see him in this picture anywhere? He sure blends in good. Oh, there he is. But in the springtime, no matter how hard Jackson tried to hide, birds still found him. Busy songbirds building nests and raising families did not like him. Blue jays, cardinals, robins, and even the tiniest chickadees fearlessly attacked the big owl. The brave little birds swooped angrily around Jackson, plucking feathers from his head to make him go away. Look at that blue jay. Oh my, they didn't like the big bird. Crows were the only birds able to chase Jackson away from his tree. They pestered him until he flew away. A lone blue spruce just at the edge of the meadow was a safe haven for him. He burrowed deep into the branches, safe from the bullying crows. There he is. This is Jackson right there. He's flying to this big blue spruce. The crows are chasing him. And if Nick happened to pass below, Jackson would hoot at him, soft enough so that the crows would not hear, but loud enough to say to him, to Nick, "Hello, friend. I am here, safe and sound." Let's see if we can find him in the blue spruce. We gotta glare. There he is. Becoming a member of the family meant new responsibilities for Jackson. Each day he made sure the two young girls boarded the school bus safely and stood guard outside their bedroom windows every night until pleasant dreams filled their sleep. Here's the school bus. Can you see Jackson? Do you see where he's at? Right there. Can you imagine having an owl watch after you? Then, one spring day, Jackson was missing, and Nick had a terrible feeling something might be wrong. He searched all of the owl's favorite hiding places and finally found him under the blue spruce tree. Trying to stay calm, Nick spoke softly to Jackson. "Shh, everything will be all right. I'm here now." At the sound of his friend's soothing voice, the injured owl let out a whisper of a hoot. It was all he had left for Nick. Then Jackson collapsed. Nick rushed the frail bird to a special hospital that cares for injured owls. The doctor took an x-ray of Jackson's leg and showed it to Nick. "We'll never really know for sure," said the doctor, "but I think your owl was probably hit by a car." The doctor put a large cast on Jackson's broken leg and gave him special medicines that would help the leg heal faster. Here's this picture of Jackson. He's just laying there. He's not looking very well, is he? While in the hospital, Jackson refused to eat from anyone but Nick. So it became Nick's daily ritual to visit the recovering owl at 10 o'clock every morning. "I'm here, my friend," announced Nick. An excited hoot could be heard coming from the long cage-lined wall. In typical owl fashion, Jackson bobbed his head up and down and all around to greet his friend, his best friend. It was as if he were announcing, "Finally, I thought you'd never get here." For months, these visits kept Jackson from becoming frightened or lonely. At last, the day came when the cast was removed and Jackson could go home. Nick helped the owl do special exercises every day to make his legs strong, hoping Jackson would soon be able to fly free again. There's Jackson with his cast on. I hope none of you boys or girls have had to have a cast put on. Those aren't very much fun, are they? Nick kept Jackson in a cage outside his home while he was mending. At night, Jackson began talking to the other owls. Many nights, 2 or 3 wild owls would talk to Jackson, and in the early morning hours, they would talk as well. Perhaps it was his stay at the hospital in the company of all the other injured owls that helped him realize who he really was. It saddened Nick to think that his special friend might leave, but he knew in his heart that the choice must be Jackson's. He loved the large bird and wanted what was best for him. Here he is. He's back sitting up on this really high pole. Finally, after a long time, Nick felt Jackson was ready to be set free. He opened the cage door and, with Jackson perched on his arm, said, "The time has come to stretch your wings and fly proudly." Everyone held their breath. Would he remember his old neighborhood? The owl took flight, soaring gracefully over the farm. The family smiled with relief as they watched him fly again. Just then, a hoot from the nearby woods called Jackson, and without a single look back, he was gone. Look at, here he is. He's flying again. It's just what they wanted to have happen. From the very beginning, Nick knew this time would come. He remembered the car ride home many years ago when the young owl perched so confidently on the seat. He knew even then that Jackson was a very special bird. After Jackson left, Nick spent many quiet evenings sitting on the balcony. He smiled as he remembered all the special times he shared with the owl and was a little sad that those times were over. There's Nick. You see? Sitting on his balcony by the blue spruce tree. Then, one night, just as the family began drifting off into their dreams, Nick awoke to a thump, 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 like someone walking across the rooftop, and he heard a familiar hoot. As he stepped out onto the balcony, Jackson swooped low and landed in his favorite tree next to the house. Jackson had heard the call of the wild, and his natural instinct was to be with other owls like him. But he had spent too many years living with his human family, and the pull to come back was too strong. They both knew he was home for good. For the rest of his life, Jackson lived on the farm, flying free and proud, forever watching over his family. And there's the last picture of the book. He's sitting right up on the top of the house. And that, my friends, is the true story of Jackson the owl. Jackson actually lived here in Michigan in a little town called Bath, which is down by Lansing. And I actually got to meet the author and the illustrator of this book many years ago. And it was a real joy to hear him talk about how the owl would actually tap, tap, tap on the window. And he'd bring in all these strange rodents like mice and little squirrels and all kinds of stuff and drop them at their feet because he loved his human family and he wanted to share gifts with him. My friends, I hope you're having a very nice time at home. I know that this time is very confusing and you're not quite sure what to make of things, but please know that you are loved and we want the very best for you. So with that, I hope you have a very good night and I can't wait to see you again. I miss you all. Kiss, kiss, kiss from the Dairy Queen.